Hello, my name is Jessica Mullins, and I am a digital learning coach at Flat Gap Elementary in Johnson County. And I completed the Modern Classroom project this summer, and I focused mine on blended learning phase 1. And I created mine for the teachers of my school because that's my role this year. I've been going in and supporting my teachers with different strategies that they could use. So this is one that I wanted to do, was the blended learning, but put a modern spin on it that they were able to work on it when they could. So I chose the problem of practice that our school, Flat Gap Elementary, will implement engagement strategies. And the one that we're going to be focusing on is the blended learning model to increase student motivation and student attendance. And hopefully that these strategies will foster student engagement during classroom instruction, which will result in higher student achievement by allowing students to work at their own pace and at their own path. So the first step of the Modern Classroom project was to create a mastery check. And what that is we actually developed at the end of the lesson assessment that students will use to demonstrate their mastery of the lessons. So you're really working on effective backwards planning. So what I did is I chose my objective as teachers will create and implement blended learning models in the classroom. In order to do that, I would first like them to practice by trying these 3 blended learning activities first. Then the mastery check at the end of my unit is to create a blended learning model with the 4 studios, complete a lesson plan template that I created, and submit their work samples of each studio for them to upload in a checklist. In the Modern Classroom project, you also provide opportunities for revision. So I allowed my teachers to attempt this as many times as they would like. However, if they were struggling, I would ask them to go back and re-watch the instructional videos or practice additional professional development from Blended Learning PD or Coaching Plus. And then again, I worked very closely with these teachers, and I have some that are still actually completing these lessons as we're going along. You're also supposed to provide a reassessment policy. So again, I allowed my teachers to reassess as many times as they would like because this is a work in progress. Here is the lesson plan template that I created for blended learning for my teachers. It just allowed them an outline of each step. So it gave them the opportunity for a whole group kickoff, their objective, and their learning targets. Here is the mini lesson studio for them to break up into students into many groups as they wanted. Their independent studio, a digital content, and then future ready. Then I also included a timeline to give teachers an idea about how they should pace these lessons. And then, of course, an exit ticket or a formative assessment. And this is just an overview of the blended learning model in case you're unfamiliar with that. So in phase 1, students will actually rotate from each of these lessons. So it really gives students an opportunity to choose their own path and at the own pace that they're moving. So step 2 of the Modern Classroom project was to create your first instructional video. And like I said, I was creating mine for the teachers in my building. So mine is more geared toward professional development. So this was an overall video to walk teachers through the blended learning model. And my objective was that teachers create and implement blended learning models in the classroom. I created my video in Google Slides, then I recorded it with Screencast-O-Matic. Then I went through and used Edpuzzle to embed questions. So what it would do is it would actually pause and teachers would have to answer the questions. If they answered correctly, they could move forward. If not, it asked them to re-watch the video. Within this, I also included a place for my teachers to take notes as they were working, and they could submit those notes to me. Today, we're going to be looking at blended learning. And this video will be here for you if you would like to just go through and see this, like I said, using
take their own path.
Google Slides, Screencast-O-Matic, and then Edpuzzle.
With those different learning styles, high quality skills.
And you can actually add annotations. You can write on it to kind of draw their attention to certain parts of your video. All right, step 3 is the self-pacing plan. So again, with the Modern Classroom Project, we're wanting students to work at their own pace, their own path, because we know now more than ever, we have kids on all varying levels. So just like the students, so my teachers are also going to be using this self-pacing plan. So what I did is you first outlined your unit with the must-dos. Like these are the lessons that must be completed in order for them to be successful on that mastery check. So it's the building blocks of each unit, and it's very important. However, I also included some should-dos. So you should go back and do these, and it will help you moving forward. In case they're struggling with these should-dos, give them the opportunity to do that. Then you also have some aspire to do. So those are for those students that are really moving quickly and they need some challenge, kind of push them forward so they also get the opportunity to be challenged with the aspire to do. So this is just a breakdown of each of the lessons that you see that I have my teachers working through. Again, here's some additional lessons. So here was the aspire to do lesson to really push them forward. So it really differentiates that learning for them. Here are all the different assignments that they will end up completing. And then at the end, you have the unit mastery check. So if they have completed each of these, so I kind of broke mine down into small chunks that if they've completed each of these, they can kind of put it together here at the end. So a very important part of the Modern Classroom Project is the tracking for students. So you have the self-tracking. So what I did is I actually created a Google slide here that I would display in my room, and the teachers would be able to come in and see the due dates. They can also see when which lessons need to be completed along with the self-assessment. And then what they could do is they could actually look up here and see if they could find another teacher in our building that was in the same place as them, and they could collaborate with them. So it did incorporate that collaborative model that they could go back and work with a peer. I also set it up that they would come into my room during PLCs once a week, and we would sit down and talk in small groups. I also gave them made Google Chat available to them that if they had just had a really quick question, they could send somebody a chat and they could communicate that way. We also looked at weekly check-ins. So I would meet one-on-one with my teachers. And then we would also go over rubric reports. Now, what you see here, this is just the first group of teachers that was going through this cycle. I also have more that are now working on it, but they are just now beginning the lesson 1. And you want to make sure that you have a pacing tracker along with your Modern Classroom so it keeps them on track. It really holds them accountable when they're working at their own pace. Lesson 4 is when you're putting all of your stuff together out there for your students. So what you're doing is you're wanting to create a digital platform for your students as well as a physical platform for your students. So what I used was Google Classroom because that's what the teachers in my building are used to. So what I did is I uploaded everything in Google Classroom, every lesson, every assignment, and every additional resource. And they were, as well as my pacing tracker, so they could keep up with that. So everything was in one spot. And they could actually look and see where they are when they would submit an assignment. I would give them back feedback so they could see if they were on the right track. So in my classroom, so the physical space, I actually have large tables that are set up that they can come in and sit at, and this gave them a chance to collaborate face to face. And then here you'll see an example of my Google Classroom. Again, you can see all of the lessons. Below that, you would see actually the assignments and then resources at the bottom. So we just kept everything in Google Classroom. I also created something called Blended Buddy Talks, and I allowed teachers, I set it up through Google Calendar, and they were able to schedule some one-on-one time with me if they needed some additional assistance. So submission 5, this is where you kind of put everything together. So you take that first mastery check along with instructional video. And so that ends up being your first full instructional video that you've created. So we already had that done. Well, then we laid out the lessons. So what I did is I actually chose 2 additional lessons that I thought would be most beneficial for my teachers. So the second video that I created was that teachers will create the digital content studio. So that was a piece of the blended learning model. It was a must-do lesson. Again, there was a mastery check to go along with that. Here it gives the practice for the teachers. And then here was my digital content studio instructional video and then notes for them to take as well. So that gave me 2 instructional videos for my lessons. And then you were to create a third. So the third one, I focused again on the assessment portion of the blended learning model. Again, we created another mastery check, student practice, the instructional video, and the assessment notes. So I've also included kind of the rubric that the teachers followed. So I broke down each part of the blended learning model. So the lesson planning, the mini lesson, independent studio, digital content, future ready, the formative assessment. And I let them know what I was looking for. So this was created back in the mastery check level. Again, you're thinking with an end in mind. So I listed each thing that I would be looking for. And so what we did is every time they would complete a lesson, we would pull this out one-on-one and see where they were at. And then the last portion of the Modern Classroom project is the self-reflection. So you really go back and let your students, or in my case, the teachers, see how they feel about implementing this blended learning. So how comfortable they are with the content that you gave them.